Tifu by telling a black lady the carriers are only for the whites. On mobile, so sorry for formatting and such. This happened last week and I still wince when I think about it. I run a smoothie truck in a smallish southern city in the US. I was fairly busy making several drinks with my back to my service window. Next to my machine I have several drink carriers with handles. The lady sees them and asks if she can have the carrier with handles for her drinks. I tell her I'm sorry but those carriers are only for the whites. As soon as the words left my mouth I could have died. I dropped the smoothie I was working on and did an about face so fast the truck rocked. I looked at the lady, the black lady, and just started apologizing, trying to explain. The whites are a family of 7. The father comes by twice a week, gets drinks for the family, and at some point he bought and gave me X amount of carriers for him to use to make his trips easier. Turns out she knows the whites, she goes to church with them. Thank you, Jesus. She couldn't have been nicer over the ordeal and I still feel horrible about the whole thing. I have since put the carriers out of view. DL, Doctor, I told a black lady the drink carriers are only for the white family, but made it sound like they were only for the white families. I was taking a call from the customer, answering his question, when he interrupted me with, "Are you a human? You sound like a _robot. I assured him that I am not a robot and we continued the call. After it was finished I went to my manager so she would know about it. I told her how I was somewhat angry with the caller, because I am careful to modulate my voice, and vary my speaking speed so as not to sound monotone or bored. She agreed that I had a good phone voice and told me not to let the caller get to me. 2 days later I discovered this call had been selected by the quality assurance people. They took off 10 points because I did not apologize for not sounding like a robot. I started applying at other places, not call centers, the next day. My partner and I moved into our local city, a small city not much bigger than a town, last year and have had a blast. The only thing that's annoyed us are the bin men. They come really early and wake us up, I'm talking 6 a.m. onwards, and we've even caught them idioting about us while collecting our waste/recycling. We have a lot of recycling, especially in lockdown. Anyway, we got a letter a few days ago telling us we need to start putting the bins out before they collect them on the day before 7 a.m. when they start collection instead of the night before. They also said a load of other stuff about it. Being a petty idiot, I sent them a strongly worded email countering every single one of their points and saying you can't enforce a rule for us and not the whole street. Well, this morning I just so happened to wake up at 6:30 a.m. and realized we hadn't put the bins out, nor had they come yet. Perfect. I quickly did the bins and shoved them out onto the pavement at around 6:45. The bin man came at 6:50 and grabbed it. I took pictures of the entire thing and made sure to send a follow-up email saying how I work for the NHS and they've woken me up on my only day off after working all week, an exaggerated truth but not a lie, and here's proof of them coming before 7 and I want you to put in an official complaint. We got an email back saying to ignore the letter. Stupid, petty, but got results. This happened when I was 16, in mid-2007. I was out of school and working in customer service at the time this happened. I'd started working at Target after quitting from my job at a grocery store, because they accused me of doing something I didn't do. One day I came across a Karen while buying groceries. Oh goody. I should probably mention that I have a twisted and dirty sense of humor, and mix in my immaturity at 16 and my well-crafted patronizing customer service voice and you're in for a good time. The uniform was black pants and a light blue button-up shirt with the store logo on the front. My non-work outfit would consist of shorts and a bright-colored shirt that didn't even remotely resemble the uniforms of any stores in the city, let alone this grocery store's uniform. But somehow this was overlooked. Karen, excuse me. I didn't think she was talking to me. Karen, louder, excuse me. I turned and saw a middle-aged woman I didn't recognize from my time working there. Karen, about time you answered. What's with the lazy staff here? Me, I don't work here. Karen, yes you do. Now help me. Where are the nuts? Me, how would I know? I'd only ever worked as a server so I wasn't familiar with the layout of the back of the store. Karen, because you're working. Where are the nuts? Me, well, I personally don't have nuts but I can point you in the direction of the staff members that do. If you're talking about the nut cases, well, I'm looking at one. As for any other nuts, how about you find it yourself? Or, better yet, find someone who works here. Karen, how dare you? I'm going to get you fired. Me, good luck with that lady. If you see the manager, tell him Op said hi. As for the nuts, how about you suck it? And I went on with my shopping. I wonder if she found her nuts. Who knows? Note, this isn't my story, it's my friend's. He told me when I went into the charity shop today. So, my friend, F, has a mobility scooter with a trailer. He takes his dog with him. It's pretty big, but enough to take it through a small shop. Doing this doesn't leave him space for much maneuvering. He drove into the shop, following the one-way system correctly, but was forced to stop because there was a guy in his way. He was just standing there, talking on the phone. Now, when F asked him politely to move, he denied. In fact, he smirked at him, and went even further into the center of the aisle. Now, petty revenge mode activated. After about a minute of waiting, and the dog started whining, instead of shouting at him to move, F started his mobility scooter back up and started honking his horn. Now, bearing in mind that the guy was on his phone, it ruined his call. He couldn't hear a darn thing. Eventually, after about a minute, he finally moved out of the way. The dog got some treats too. There's some we keep behind the counter. Edit, I refer to F as friend, not as female. He is a male. Apologies for the confusion. Intro, verify, blah blah blah. Me, how can I help you today? Caller, my Zoom is broken, it doesn't work with my new headset. Me, what's going on? Caller, I bought a new headset, but it only works when the attached charging cable is plugged into the laptop. Me, what kind of wireless technology does it use? Caller, I don't know. I plug in the charging cable, and it works, and I can hear YouTube, but when I unplug it, it stops working. Me, by charging port, do you mean USB? Caller, no, the one that charges phones. Me, does the cable unplug from the headset? Caller, no, I told you, the charging cable is attached to the headset. Me, and it works when it's plugged in? Caller, yes. Are you going to help me fix the wireless or not? Confirm make and model from package. Me, what we have here is a wired headset. The charging port is a USB port for connecting devices. It must be plugged in to work. Caller, if you're not going to help me, I'll figure it out myself. Caller hangs up. I'm a courtroom assistant in a Southeast Asian country. I'd rather not get much further than that on identifying information. We do both security and practical assistance like moving displays, escorting juries, and some ceremonial stuff as well. This was the sentencing of an evil flip on several high crime offenses, similar to what a capital offense may be in America. Here high crime is the level above criminal offense, or felony for the rest of the world. He stalked, kidnapped, raped, and murdered a locally famous and growing pop artist who was pregnant. He was charged with stalking, high crime kidnapping, high crime rape, high crime murder, high crime fetal homicide, and a bunch of other stuff. Evil Flip, as he will be referred to from here on out, was on suicide precautions as he made threats against his own life in prison, so he was in spiffy paper clothes. We were well into victim impact statements. The victim had a large family and there were something like 35 individuals addressing the court. We're something like 28 statements into it. Next up was Granddad. These are always really emotional, families are always really upset for good reason, but this 80-plus old guy is the worst I can remember. He was crying, breathing heavily, shaking, the entire sentencing. He was called to make his statement, starts walking up, about past the counsel table. He then turns, tackles the attorneys and Evil Flip. He didn't get much in on the Evil Flip, maybe a kick and 2 punches before 15 of us pile up on him. He was taken into custody, and it quickly became apparent that Evil Flip got what was coming. Evil Flip is screaming and gagging for about 20 seconds, then he starts convulsing, came back in about 2 minutes choking/gagging, really bad. We put him on his side and get an ambulance on the way. The rest of the gallery was evacuated and court went into recess. By time the ambulance arrives he's not breathing, only twitching and has no pulse. They do CPR, take him out to the hospital. He was revived and died later that day. Coroner's report said his brainstem was damaged, his skull was broken, and brain herniated through break in his skull. The Granddad was interviewed by national police who have jurisdiction of courts. He said that he'd been planning that for days, he felt no remorse, said if he had time he would have killed the attorneys too. It also came out that the Granddad was in my country's mob back in the day, had 40 years in prison prior for drowning someone in petrol and lighting their corpse on fire. He was suspected but not confirmed to be involved in several other high-profile murders. He was charged with murder, conspiracy, contempt of court, and 2x simple battery for the attorneys. He was found not guilty of everything except contempt of court, to which he was originally sentenced to 4 years, but it was reduced to terminal probation with home confinement due to his health. How do you respond to customers who claim another employee said XYZ would be ready and ask you why the employee supposedly told them that? This drives me crazy because they sit there waiting for you to answer. How am I supposed to know why someone said something in a conversation that I was not present for? Explaining why XYZ isn't ready doesn't cut it, because they don't care if it's too soon, has an insurance problem, whatever. They want you to explain why someone else at some point in time told them something, pouting face. I'm just looking for a clever, quick response to shut this down because it's one of those things that I don't have a ready-to-go quip for. This is a continuation of my last post here. TDLR, management thinks guests will be able to figure out our automated temp screening system. It uses an iPad on a stand with a thermal camera to read a person's forehead temp. They can't see, they don't read signs or listen to instructions. I now babysit a tablet instead of doing my job. So my manager's boss came in today to see how our new temp screening was going. He brought in a few guests to see how people who have never used the system before respond to it. The instructions are posted along the queue area and next to the station. Position your face about 18 inches away from the tablet. Do not touch the tablet. Approval message / means that your temp is within acceptable limits. If your temp is too high, please see the front desk for assistance. The first person went through the line. They walk up to the tablet, but they're taller so their chest is at the level of the camera. They stand there for a good 30 seconds before they tell me it isn't working. It checks your forehead, you may need to bend down. They back away about 4 feet, wait for a little bit, and tell me it still isn't working. My forehead's in the shot, it's not working. Me, you're not close enough, you need to put your forehead about 18 inches away from the tablet. They walked back to the tablet, this time putting their face about an inch away from it. Me, you need to be about 1.5 feet away, that's too close. They take a step back and it finally can read the temp. Them, that was complicated. The rest of the people go through the line relatively easily, they all watch the first person. While the guests were going through the line, the boss came up and asked how often that happens. Me, every time, sir. Only 1 or 2 have done it on their own. Boss, you're serious? Me, yep, you can check the cameras. I'm just lucky no one touched anything trying to adjust it, then I would have had to sanitize the whole station. Most guests touch it. Boss's face dropped and he gave a look to my manager. I've never seen my manager so embarrassed before. As annoying and frustrating it has been talking people through the screening process, how red my manager turned made it worth it. I was told by the boss that new options would be explored. A few years ago my business partner and I rented a remodeled garage space to run our business out of. The owner had not rented to a business before, so she needed to get a different contract ready for us. A while later, we decided to close the business. We informed the landlord and were told we would still need to pay monthly until the end of our contract. I asked if we could transfer the contract to a new tenant and we would be willing to do the legwork there. She wouldn't allow it. We asked if there was a clause for buying our way out of the contract. She said no. We tried a few other options, but all she wanted was for us to continue paying until the contract was up. I was skeptical that the contract had no provisions for an early termination, but I couldn't get to my copy of the contract. It was stored somewhere safely off-site. So I asked her for a copy and she obliged. While on the phone discussing our options, I noticed that because she had to find a new contract for us since we were a business, not an individual, she hadn't proofread as well as she thought. I read a few paragraphs of the contract she provided that clearly states that our contract is month to month, not annual. She got notably irritated and swore that was the wrong contract. I pointed out that the contract she sent had both of our signatures on it and she is welcome to take this to the courts if she feels that is necessary. We never heard from her again until we had to drop off the keys. TL Doctor, our landlord would not work with us to find an agreeable way to end our rental contract, so we reread the contract and got out of it for free. Rochelle Stubblefield disappeared from Hammond, Indiana after attending a basketball game at Calumet College on November 10, 2015. She was 8.5 months pregnant at the time. U/Trifle Truffles posted a write-up of Rochelle's case here. Finally, an arrest has been made. Rochelle's boyfriend, the purported father of her child, Darren Fuller, has been charged with murder. The news site will ask you to take a survey to continue reading. If you open the survey, you will have an immediate option to skip it, and go straight to the article. Rochelle's body has not been found. Some of you may remember that Rochelle, was my student at CCSJ. Though I have moved to a new college in a new state, today my former students and I are grieving together, and hoping for resolution. I worked at F500 company for 12 years, got laid off several years ago and hired back as contract. I add a lot of value because of my skill set and my tribal knowledge. Being contract instead of actual staff means a pay cut, way more expensive health insurance, no PTO at all, no sick or vacation time, all holidays off work are unpaid, and no bonuses like corporate employees get. Asked for a raise a while back, got laid off because I was uppity? WTF? For my lead, I was his best employee. Anyway, get another contract job for the same company, work there a year, get a raise because I wrote a bunch of sweet code, then right as I am hitting a 2-year anniversary in this department and hoping to ask for another raise, COVID hits. We start working from home. It's gravy. Well, the company decides to cut contract pay, but give corporate employees a raise, WTF? So now I work half days and charge for full time. I'm a librarian. I feel like the fact that library books in the fiction section are alphabetized by the author's last name is pretty common knowledge. At least, it should be amongst librarians, but apparently I work with a whole team of Kevins. This morning I was looking for a children's book, Zoe and Sassafras, Grumplets and Pests, by Asia Citro, illustrated by Marion Lindsay. So where would you expect this to be shelved? Not under the author's name. Wasn't under the illustrator, either. Not even under S, in case you're an idiot and thought the author's name was Zoe Sassafras. Nope. It was in the Z's. There's even a little letter C stamped on the top edge of the book so you know where it goes. Of all the possible ways to get this wrong, they chose the wrongest. This is my first time here and I don't expect this to blow up, but whatever. We just got back from a field exercise, Army. While we were there, my gunner ordered me to sweep the tank turret. Considering it was the middle of the exercise, we were running on maybe a couple hours of sleep a day, and that turret was going to be dirty again in like 30 minutes, it was a pointless task. To make it more annoying, we had some downtime at the moment. So while he decided to take a nap on the front slope, he told my sleep-deprived ass to sweep. Fine, but you're not gonna like it. I took the backside of the brush and started vigorously scraping the mud off the turret, right above where he slept. Dirt and dust started falling on him and he woke up, spitting dirt out of his mouth and sputtering, telling me UPFFFD you don't have to sweep SPLFFD right here dude, it's fine. Just stop, you're good. He. Put that brush back and took a nap on the turret. Not too malicious, but very compliant. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. This happened at a property I worked at and I thought it might interest some people. At our hotel we had 3 places where liquor was stored. The first was a cabinet behind the bar which was locked and only the AGM and restaurant manager had the key to it. The second place was a storage room with a cage in it. All the liquor for banquets/events was stored in the cage and only a manager could sign out the key to the storeroom and the key to the liquor cage. Both of these places had security cameras on them. The last place liquor was stored was in a basement storage room. It had a typical commercial-grade metal door with 2 locks on it, and once you got inside the basement storage room there was another larger liquor cage with a padlock that had all of our inventory for the entire hotel. Only the AGM had the 3 keys needed to get into the basement storage room and the liquor cage. There was a video camera in the hall facing the door to the basement liquor room so anyone going in or out would be on camera. One day all the managers got called into a meeting with the GM and AGM. Our AGM was the one who really ran the entire hotel. They told us that the liquor inventory had been off for the last 6 months and that many high-end liquors had been stolen from the basement storage room. Management had no idea how this was possible. Our company was very strict when it came to liquor costs. 2 food and beverage managers were fired for out-of-control liquor costs and excessive labor costs, so our hotel took this very seriously. One day my AGM figured out what was happening. He went into the basement liquor cage and noticed footprints on the empty shelves. There were 2 windows in the cage that were at ground level. Someone had jury-rigged the window so that it appeared to be locked shut like all the other windows, but the culprit had a way of opening a window that shouldn't be able to be opened from the outside. They then climbed in through the window, stepping on the empty shelves in the process, and helped themselves to as much top-shelf liquor as they could carry. At first they only stole a bottle here and a bottle there so it wasn't noticed at first, but after 6 months they had progressed to stealing entire cases of top-shelf liquor. Maintenance fixed the window so it couldn't be opened at all and our liquor stopped disappearing. There were no cameras outside, so the person who was doing it could sneak in the window and sneak back out and walk 10 feet to the parking lot. We lost a couple grand worth of liquor over 6 months, but management didn't want to tell us the actual loss. They had a suspect but they couldn't prove it was him. He worked overnights as security, but he was an employee from engineering, maintenance department, so they think he was the thief. There was only a night auditor on at night with the employee, so he could have easily done it without anyone noticing or seeing him. Hey, guys. I'm really looking for some advice about the place I currently work at. Please try to help me out. So I currently work at a pizza restaurant. It's not a part of a chain, so they don't have delivery drivers or anything. It's just a small restaurant along a main road. Like a small town Italian diner. It's pretty much just elderly who grab a bite there. I started working there in February, before coronavirus. My friend has worked there since she was 16, 2 years. She put in a good word for me to get the job. I'm under 16, so it's harder for me to get a job, but I turned 16 in December, so it should be easier then. Well, I originally signed up to bus and waitress, but they decided to just make me a dishwasher, whatever, it's a job. Sadly, there's a but. They had me start on training, understandably. 4.00 an hour. No biggie. Well, I worked there for a solid month before COVID, and they didn't pay me not once. I asked my friend who worked there when payday was, and she explained to me that we were paid every 2 weeks. I always checked for a paycheck and yet never received one, despite the fact that I worked a good 10 hours between 2 weeks. When COVID shut down restaurants, I didn't come in for 3 months. Well, I came back in June. They cut my hours to only 3 a week, which makes sense, not many people want dine-in because of the virus. They finally paid me, but they only paid me for some hours. Not all of them. My check ended up being cashed out for only $32. Recently they started giving my hours to other coworkers. They'll give me a day and then they'll have my friend text me, "Don't come in, you're not needed." Then they give the hours to another dishwasher, or sometimes to a random waitress, like WTFFFF. My mother won't let me quit. She says it's a commitment. But I don't even think it's legal what they're doing. Is it because I'm 15? I don't quite understand. Also, I have a job interview tomorrow at a fancy Greek restaurant, so maybe things will look up. Later, X. I have removed here the name of a well-known American writer and ex-soldier, set me up with the U.S. Embassy out of Honduras. They sent me to Nicaragua to take pictures of Sandinista encampments and get GPS locations. Ex-soldier, well-known American writer, knew Bruce Hynek, had connections with the U.S. Embassy in Honduras. It's an exercise left to the reader, apparently. I don't know enough about any of these things to ask the right questions. Does anyone know who is being referred to here? Edit, more about X. The next day, Bruce was at the bar in the Metropolitan Club in New York City, drinking Chivas on the rocks. I used to meet X there. This was that same writer, who had previously helped him sell looted antiquities. X had buyers. When X arrived, Bruce took him to his hotel room and showed him the loot. He said, "Son of an idiot, this is great. Bruce, old boy, you've topped it all." But Bruce had no idea what he had, and neither did X, and so X contacted a gal he knew who worked at an auction house I will call Y. She would take a look at stuff and tell us what we had. This happened in the late 1980s or early 1990s with me, male, in my late 30s or early 40s. The high school where I taught was having an open house that night, so after school I went home and changed into a suit and tie and headed back to school. On the way I noticed that my tie had a stain, so I pulled into the parking lot of the local redacted store. Just as I arrive at the men's section, a lady stops me and asks if I could help her find something. I was about to tell her that I didn't work there, when I noticed that there was a salesperson about 40 feet away. So I asked her to please follow me, and off we went. "This lady is looking for whatever it was, could you help her?" I asked the actual employee. "Yes sir, I would be glad to be of help." His smile told me that he understood the situation. I turned to the lady and smiled. She thanked me, and I went back to look for a tie. I'm pretty sure she thought I was a store manager. Edit, I can't remember if I ended up getting a new tie. Back when I was a kid, around the same time Noah was building the ark in an attempt to impress women and get laid, I had a neighbor Kevin who was appropriately named Kevin. He was the youngest of about 5, and for his 12th birthday, he got a brand new BB pistol for Christmas. For about 2 weeks, he went around shooting everything he could, until one day, he wondered to himself if a BB gun really hurt. So he took his new gun, put the barrel to his hand, and pulled the trigger. Newsflash, it does hurt. The BB lodged into the soft flesh of his hand, and he had to go to the hospital to get it cut out. After that, his parents took away the BB gun, and never let him play with it again, at least as long as they lived across the street. He had a few boneheaded moments, but this stood out as the stupidest thing that I had heard of anyone doing. He did manage to clean up and did well in the Navy for a while at least, until a drunk driver ended his naval career. Obligatory apologies for mobile formatting in my first post, not just comment and length. So, I cried today. I know I'm not the first and no I won't be the last to do so, but I let a grumpy old man get to me. Wanted to check in at 11 a.m. and swore up and down that they've been to 20 states and countless hotels and they always let them do it. Not to mention he's traveling with a wheelchair-bound insulin-dependent wife during all of this Rona. He was mad that I said housekeeping didn't even have a room ready. We've been very lucky with occupancy, and although I offered our employee fridge for the meds, he wanted to put it into the room they'd be checking into. Once he came back, I was in my office. I am a DOS. I heard him say he'd never been treated so rudely. I stupidly went out there to apologize again, and he told me he wasn't speaking to me and to go back wherever I came from. I go out of my way to be kind, courteous and respectful to everyone. I go out of my way to help the front desk housekeeping, and in all my years have never been treated like this from a GM or guest. So far I've had a GM in a forever relationship with the head housekeeper. One of them was told to leave because they never told management. She flew out on her broom like her ass was on fire and threw everything she could get her hands on. On previous occasion, the GM sat there silently as the said head housekeeper screamed at me for not making my presence known on Saturday and Sunday, just so staff could see me. I'm on call every single night and weekend. Since his girlfriend isn't there, the GM has become a puppy following her around to a raging idiot. Come in every GD day finding someone or something to tell about. I haven't slept in 5 days, so I'm a little weepy and overwhelmed. Thanks for listening. I work at a small-town coffee shop that has managed to adapt and stay busy during COVID-19 by utilizing a window for walk-up service. A regular problematic customer, let's call him TJ, is a typical middle-aged man riddled with toxic masculinity. He often makes female employees and customers uncomfortable with his comments. Lately he's been around a lot, being typical TJ. Today he came to our window and ordered a coffee. Cool, nothing out of the ordinary. A co-worker asked him if he would like to tip via our Square register. We normally don't verbally ask customers, but with the current pandemic we are not allowing customers to touch our iPad system. He proceeded to tell her to put 100, and reassured them he wanted to tip that much because he appreciates our hard work and effort and wants to chip in since our business has been a bit slower. Okay, I gave him that and almost have a change of heart about DJ. We both outwardly thank him and he goes on his way. I text my boss about this uncharacteristic interaction with TJ, and through their end of the register system she was able to look at the transaction. They noticed that not only was the credit card he used not in his name, but in his boss's name, on their company card. Typical TJ. What a D-bag. I have plenty of stories since I have been working in a call center for 2 years now. I am sure I will share more stories, but here is one that stands out. I actually work in call center for a health insurance company. So I help people all day with questions about their insurance. A lot of time was spent trying to explain to people what a deductible is. For people who aren't sure, a deductible is basically an amount of money that you have to pay towards your medical expenses before the insurance starts to pick up the bill. If you have a $400 deductible, you have to pay $400 before insurance starts paying anything. People hate deductibles and I don't blame them. However, I have never been so utterly shocked as to this story. Hello, thank you for calling Plan. My name is Op, how can I help you today? Yes, I want to know why I have X amount due on this bill. I can look into that for you. I spent some time getting the account and claim information up. Well, it looks like X amount goes towards your deductible, so that's why you have to pay that. But I pay my deductible every month. It should be covered. Me, a few moments of silence. That's not your deductible, that's your premium. They're the same thing. No, they are not the same. The premium is an amount you pay monthly to have the plan, the deductible is a part of the plan and is an amount of money you have to pay before certain services are covered by the insurance. Well, take it off then. I am already paying you my premium every month, so that should have paid the deductible. I can't, it's part of the plan that you agreed to when signing up for insurance with us, and the deductible is not related to the premium. You have to meet the deductible through medical expenses. I want to appeal my deductible. Again, silence. I can submit an appeal for you, but the deductible is a part of the plan that you agreed to having when you signed up for insurance with us. There's not really a way to change it at this point. The caller yelled at me with some choice words for a bit and hung up. I felt bad for them, but I was so shocked that they thought they paid their deductible every month. I have run into people who don't know/understand what a deductible is, but not people who are adamant that it's their premium, since most people understand what a premium is and how it works. Hope you enjoyed the story. Thanks for reading. First time posting, currently a EMS dispatcher for a private ambulance company for 3 years now. We take some calls, however, they're usually seizures, psych, and falls. This one? Probably should have been psych, but unfortunately she wasn't the patient. This call happened in my first year, while I was pretty fresh and didn't understand the power of controlling a call. And #X200B. Me, okay, tell me exactly what happened. CLR, yeah, my mom fell in the other room, you know we have her locked in there right now, but yeah, she fell and I think she may have hit her head. Me, okay, are you with her now? CLR, well, you see, she has dementia, and we live in a new home, so she is locked in there. You see, we can't have her wandering because of the bears that are around here. Me, have you gone to check on her yet? CLR, no, I can't unlock her door because she will get out and the bears will get her. Me, can you please go check on the patient? CLR, yeah, I think she might have hit her head, it sounded like she hit the end table, that's what woke me up, but even our big dog, insert large dog brand, is afraid to go outside because there are bears here at this new house. Please send the ambulance, but make sure they get in and out quick because the bears will get them. Rinse and repeat for literally every one of the 10 questions involved with a fall. I was essentially working with a third-party caller as she flat out refused to unlock her mother from the room until the EMTs got there, let alone even go look at her. And #X200B. I kid you not, I heard way more about these bears than I ever got out of her regarding her fallen mother. While I may have wanted to bash my head into the desk repeatedly asking her the questions, now I can have a good belly laugh over it. From what I do remember though, Mom was transported alright, and no EMTs were mauled by the darn bears. So today I, 22F, had a delivery early in the morning. As most people I sleep in my underwear and nothing else. So I was half asleep when I had a knock on the door. I quickly shot up and put a t-shirt on that didn't cover my underwear. Got downstairs to open the door but had one hand holding my t-shirt down behind the door to cover myself up. Opened the door and a delivery driver tried handing me over a big box. I, being an idiot, said I only have one arm, and she replied with, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I never think about these things. My apologies, please don't report me." Realizing she thought I genuinely had one arm and being a very awkward person, I smiled and said it's fine, thank you, and she left. TLDR, only had t-shirt on, knock on the door. Tried covering my underwear with one arm behind the door, driver tried giving me a box, told driver I only had one arm, she asked me not to report her. Last night while creating a new character for an upcoming Dungeons & Dragons game I was reminded of this incident that occurred when I was 16 years old, more than 5 years ago. My group of friends and I had just finished our exams and were about to embark on our extended summer vacation before we started college, UK college not US college. We had decided that once we were done with school for the semester we would have an epic D&D campaign to look forward to. While we were not studying, that was what we were talking about, and when we were studying, that is where more often than not our procrastination led us to. I honestly had no idea how our DM was able to balance preparing for a campaign and preparing for the exams, but credit has to be given where credit is due, he managed to get it done. I however was a little bit behind on preparing my character. I had provided a race and class, human wizard, and a rough concept of a backstory that I had promised to get fleshed out before we properly began. However, in true schoolboy fashion I left it to the last minute. In fact, I had left it to the weekend that my girlfriend at the time was staying over, and along with my whole immediate family, mother, father, and sister, we were going on a day trip to some air show for 2 nights. My GF was not feeling well Friday evening, but by Saturday morning she said she felt fine and that all it had meant was that she was a little delayed in getting everything ready. In the middle of the chaos of getting ready for our weekend getaway, there I was at my computer busily typing away a backstory and researching names. I knew I wanted a Celtic name, which my girlfriend happened to have, of some kind for my D&D character's name as well as their families. My research just so happened to take me to a page of Gaelic baby names and meanings which proved very useful. Then for some reason I was pulled away from the computer, and at this point my mother had gone into my room and had seen what was on the screen. Anyway, to fast forward a bit, I returned to my computer and sent the Word document to my friend, and as a family we went for our weekend away. The 2 nights passed without incident, and on our way home we dropped my GF off at her house as it was on the way. Once we had returned home and the car was unpacked, I heard those dreaded words. "Up, come to the kitchen, Dad, and I would like to have a word." Once my mother had checked that my sister was in her room, my parents sat me down and told me they knew my GF was pregnant and went into that cliché thing of "we are not angry, we are just disappointed." As an oblivious 16-year-old I was completely confused. How could they know that fact and I couldn't? What followed were 30 minutes of tears, confusion, and the realization of what had happened and the assumptions my parents had made. TLDR/research DND character names by using a baby name website which my parents had taken to think that my girlfriend was pregnant. I use an app on my phone to silence my phone for certain hours of the day, but occasionally it glitches out and some notifications slip through. This morning I woke up after I received the exact following SMS. Make a loan of R10,000 to R5M with Southern Finance at 3% rate. With no LTC. Blacklisted included to caller what '/sap /redacted / to apply. I will WhatsApp them tomorrow morning with a response. Except I will write each word in a different message. I spent a few hours writing a Python program to log into my web browser, and send the message for me. So this lady came in with her husband last week complaining that the bank allowed fraud to happen on her account. It was unfortunate, and I was ready to help her, but her husband kept asking how the bank can let fraud happen without stopping it. "I think about these things because I'm a lawyer," he says. In my mind I'm thinking whoop-de-doo for you, this isn't a legal matter though. The two of them are bickering a lot and frankly being quite annoying, so I get them in track and help the lady do everything that she needs for now. And I give her the fraud department number so she can make a claim on her own time. They thank me and leave. A week later, she comes in alone. She says that the fraud department was extremely rude and unhelpful, mostly because her lawyer called on her behalf and they refused to deal with him since he had no right to the accounts. Then I suddenly realize that she isn't married, and she has a bum lawyer who doesn't even know how to introduce himself. I called fraud for her and on the phone the agent told me that the record shows that her lawyer got into a yelling match with another agent, because the bank has nothing to prove that he is who he says he is. So I fixed the account blocks, since the kerfuffle resulted in all of her accounts frozen, and I processed her claim myself. She left satisfied. Tifu. When I was grocery shopping a few months ago, I was in the breakfast cereal aisle when I saw this lady, probably early 20s. She was gorgeous, bright eyes, tall, blonde and thin. Her hair was heavenly, super light, super straight and looked so soft. Literally she was like an angel on earth. Before I get to the flip up, I'd need to say that I appreciate when women compliment me because it makes me feel good. Like, wow, another woman finds me attractive. That means everything to be validated by another woman. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Do men compliment men? Not really? Let's normalize that. Anyways, I like to do the same and compliment people when I can so they'll feel great too. Unfortunately, I feel very inferior to other women, so I'm super awkward talking to / complimenting them. But, knowing how compliments make me feel, I try to muster up the courage and tell them what's on my mind. So, I said, "Wow, your hair is so pretty." And dear Lord, the next words literally keep me up at night. I cringe at myself every time I think of this, but what I said next was, "I just want to pet it." Why have I been cursed with this awkwardness? Who says that to a random people they don't even know? There are so many better ways to compliment someone's hair. And you know what she did? Looked at me horrified like I was a creep and said, no thanks," and turned away. You bet I noped out of the store after that. I don't know if you'll think this is Tifu worthy, but I literally think about it all the time and cringe at my awkwardness. Why, Amber, why? DL, doctor complimented a woman and looked like a complete creep. One of my older female co-workers got COVID, from work presumably, since she would always tell me she never went out or had contact with anyone besides work, and we closed down for about 2 days. We're not allowed to tell anybody the reason, nor are we allowed to know who it is. I know because she told me she was feeling sick the day before she got a positive test. We were told we would be contacted if we had been in close personal contact with the affected employee. I received no contact except for a mass text everyone got the next day saying one of our employees contracted COVID and that we would be closed for sanitation. I opened with her for a whole week. I was in close contact with her, and they refused to tell anyone who it was. To make matters worse, my co-workers are still resuming on with their gross habits. We have a small break area, so only one person can be on break at a time. My co-workers will crowd the area and stand around and get mad when they're asked to leave and take their break in a different part of our back of house. I've watched my co-workers share registers with me while I go on a lunch or a break and not wipe it down after their last customer when I come back. I don't want to sound like a work Karen, but their lack of consideration is gross. I wipe down areas every single time I punch in/out, break, and use a register. It's just common courtesy while working in retail, I'd think. I don't think we should even be open as a clothing store honestly, but it's just the way things are. I just wish my coworkers had more compassion about the situation because now another one of my coworkers has fallen ill and is awaiting the results of a COVID test. I'm scared out of my mind. I got a test and I'm waiting for the results as well because I've been in close contact with all these people. I work for a boss who's big on metrics and has an Excel tracker for everything about our project, and insists everyone should post their milestones, but also wants all the trackers to match so they tell the same story. Anyone familiar with the pitfalls of having multiple users update Excel files will know where this is going. Boss has become aware of said pitfalls and now schedules weekly hourly meetings with everyone in the group to obtain info so she can post the updates herself. And no, said boss insists on sticking only with Excel. Alrighty then. So you know what I'm doing all day today ahead of our meeting this afternoon? Updating my copy of said trackers and taking my sweet time doing it. Hey, it's work, and you can't rush accuracy and correctness now, can you? So my mom and I were driving home from the grocery today and decided that we were pretty hungry. I'd recently gotten myself hooked on Einstein Brothers bagels, so we decided that's where we would go. I hopped on Google Maps to find the nearest location and mindlessly started the route. We were already noticing that the route we were taking was pretty weird, but didn't think much of it. Well, we eventually come to a big toll/gate style thing. Looks like the thing you stop at when you cross state borders, except for the fact that it said ID required. My dumb butt still thought everything was normal. There are random toll booths places, right? Well, what we see next is a lady dressed in a full military suit and bulletproof vest asking us what we are doing here. My mom just stares at her and asks, "Do you know where the Einstein Bagels is?" The woman looked super confused and my mom was just telling her that the Google Maps was telling us to take a right to get to the bagels until finally the lady understood what was going on. Turns out there is an Einstein Brothers on the military site, and we were not allowed to be there. The lady and guy there with her both thought it was pretty funny. So we turned around embarrassed and still hungry. We ended up eating somewhere else. Made a pretty good memory, I guess. TL, Doctor, my mom and I wanted bagels, ended up driving into a military base. Mission failed, no bagels. Obligatory. This didn't happen today, but last year. I was on a business trip with some colleagues, clients, and general contractors. When they get away from their wives for a few days and hang out with a bunch of other men, things obviously get a bit inappropriate and rowdy. Most of them could easily drink me under the table even though I'm in my 20s and they're all maybe 45 to 65. A typical night after our meetings involves drinking a lot at dinner and then bar hopping all night. Restaurant bills are easily hundreds of dollars, and bar tabs aren't far behind. Everyone usually rotates paying the bill. Our office policy is the most senior employee picks up the tab, and my boss specifically told me not to pay because HR usually only approves bar tabs for senior staff anyway. It doesn't really matter since everyone expenses them and the client pays for it all in the end anyway, but it basically looks like I'm just drinking for free all week. So they usually give me shoot for never offering to pay, though I have on occasion. So on to the story. We're finishing up with dinner, listening to the same old jokes about a client's sex life with his third wife or something, and someone reaches to pay the tab. The contractor next to me says, "Thanks, I'll grab the tip." Considering they just recently discovered that's what she said, I figured it was a good time to teach them a new phrase, so of course I replied, "Grab the tip? Just the tip?" Well, he did not like that. "I'm paying more for this tip than you have all week." Followed by some other grumbles that I'm pretty sure I blocked out from my memory. After removing my foot from my mouth, I tried to stammer through an explanation of my joke, but I didn't get through it before he was on to some other conversation with someone else. TLDR, made a just the tip joke and got chewed out for never picking up any tabs. Bartender at a local pizza joint. My buddy came in after a long day dealing with his two sick little girls. He tells me a story from today about the littlest. She's screaming for him from the bathroom. She states she's been waiting for 60 years for him. All she wanted was a cheese pizza from our place. Since they were sick, he went with something more appropriate for upset stomachs. But you can guarantee I got him a gift certificate for a cheese pizza for her when she's better. Nice to have good customers to even out the bad ones, lol. For over 8 years now I have been a volunteer for a charity organization that has an event only once a year. This event is to raise money for research for children's cancer, and the main event is having hundreds of people getting their heads shaved completely bald. I, 41F, have gone bald twice and am planning on doing it again next year. Although this event only happens about once a year, it happens all over and not always on the same day. At the location I always volunteer at is a restaurant/bar with a stage for live bands. There are also merchandise for sale and a silent auction in the back. I am always assigned to the silent auction area but love being back there. I'm not usually great with interactions with people, but this always brings out the best in me and is a blast helping people, explaining how it works, about items, etc. Now I have a ton of stories from working there, but just going to focus of this one Karen. My first year volunteering we had people steal a bunch of things from the charity auction. So after the auction ends I am one of the 2 people they put at the one entrance/exit to the place to verify that people have paid for the item they are taking. I'm a heavy-set gal, so blocking your way or sitting on you is not a problem. After this particular year a guy had won a total of 8 items. Now as he came to claim his winnings it was very apparent that he was pretty trashed at this point and had very much drunk bid. I have seen this a lot. His wife was checking over all the items he won with the sour look on her face getting deeper and deeper. All that I remember that he won was a few signed hockey pucks, Hockey City, and a cornhole game. Others items were not small but not as big as the game. She had stuffed the pucks in her big purse before scanning around, spotting me in my volunteer shirt, and approached with that determined look in her eye. Now this was a few years ago, so only a general idea of how it went down. Excuse me. Are you one of the volunteers here? OP, unfortunately have many years of customer services skills, so it auto kicks in. Yes I am. Did you have a question with an item or the end of auction procedure? Slight frown. No. I need you to carry this, and this to my car for me. She wants me to carry the cornhole game and 2 other items by myself to her car. OP, sorry but my job right now is to man the door. Some of the employees of the restaurant/bar can help carry items out, but I have to stay here. Karen gives me a glare but swiftly walks past to get her help. That's it. No big ending, but for me it felt a bit good. I worked in housekeeping in a hotel for months up until this past week. I'm now 35 weeks pregnant. I was scheduled to work 5+ days a week, with 20+ rooms to myself. I came into work recently, because I was on the schedule, and I could barely walk. I couldn't bend my back and my ankles were hugely swollen. I had been in L&D the night before to stop contractions. We didn't have many rooms, but 5 housekeepers in-house. Everyone was almost begging my manager to send me home, as we had too many housekeepers for the amount of rooms. Now, I'm huge at this point in pregnancy. I can't bend too far forward in general. My manager and I, discussed a couple weeks ago that she didn't want me cleaning bathtubs, so I was to have another housekeeper come clean my bathtubs. No biggie, I was fine with that. Well, the day before I quit I had went to find another HK to help with a bathtub. Said manager stopped us in the hall and asked what we were doing socializing on the clock. We explained that she was going to clean a bathtub for me and would go right back to her rooms. She yelled at me and said that if I can't do my job, I need to quit so that she can hire someone who's willing to work. I explained that it wasn't that I wasn't willing to work, rather that's one small task that I myself struggle with accomplishing. She didn't care. She continued yelling at me. Now, I've always hated being yelled at, so I spent the rest of my shift crying while cleaning my rooms. I got home from work, still crying. My boyfriend became extremely upset as I told him what had happened. We decided that it's in the best interest of our child that I just be done, as it's a lot of emotional trouble as well as physical. So I gave my manager her wish, and I went in and handed in my scrubs and quit. She seemed sympathetic, said she understood, was sad to see me go, and for me to come talk to her after I was released from maternity leave. Fast forward to today, another HK at said hotel was talking to this manager, while recording the conversation to send to me. She asked if I would be back after baby. The manager told her that I was lazy and a crybaby, so she would never consider hiring me back. I'm glad I quit. I feel like I dodged a bullet. I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to convince myself to work in housekeeping again. This didn't happen today, but it still haunts me. I work in video production. I was on a shoot filming some B-roll when I noticed my car in the background of a shot. I asked a colleague to move it, and when she asked for the keys, I flipped up. Some background info: when I'm out with my camera for fun, I'm used to my partner hovering behind me in a bored hurry up can we move on kinda way. My partner also always carries the car keys because he has nice deep pockets. Women's pockets suck. Anyway, my partner was not on this shoot as it was for work. When my colleague asked for my keys, another colleague was stood behind me hovering exactly as my partner does. In a moment of madness, I forgot where I was and who I was with. I reached behind me, not taking my eyes off the camera, and put my hand in his pocket. After rummaging around, I turned to say, "Where are the K, oh flip." His face was of pure horror. I had just groped this poor man whilst he stood there in silence. I was absolutely mortified. I tried to explain why I did it, but I sounded a bit deranged. Thankfully he saw the funny side in the end. And thankfully he didn't go to HR. TL, doctor mistaked my colleague for my partner and accidentally groped him. I'm on mobile, so bear with me. So, I work in a half takeout half dine-in place as a cashier/waitress, and only one person is scheduled per shift, so that's me. My boss has a lot of friends that always come in and always drink here. They bring their own cause, we're not licensed to serve alcohol. Anyways, my boss's friends came in and they're all relatively old and love to order me around. I was listening to music by the cash register and bobbing my head to music, and he motions me over, so I come over and he whispers, "You can go and dance on the table." I was kind of surprised he said that. Like, how do you just say that to a person? So I'm just staring at him and I respond, "No, but you can." And I walk away like, okay, WTF weirdo. And as he was leaving, I was eating some spring rolls and he's watching me as I'm about to take a bite, and he says, "I would love to see you put that in your mouth." Like, WTF, that is so inappropriate. I just stared at him and said, "No, I didn't know what else to say. It was kinda horrible and I hate my boss's friends." My boss doesn't do creepy shoot like that, thank God. But FR, how do you say that to someone right after you were talking about your daughter and grandkids? Sorry, I just couldn't handle this situation. End rant. So Sundays my store is open from 10 a to 6 p, which means that we only have one pharmacist working all day. Karen comes to drop off a script, nose poking out of her mask, and my colleague tells her 10 to 15 minutes. This is too long for her and she huffs and puffs but walks around the store. So I'm at the filling station and I see her script and fill it within 5 minutes and hand it off to the pharmacist to verify and keep filling everything else. Then my pharmacist goes in his 30 minutes lunch and I assume he verified all the waiters before he left, right? Wrong. I hear Karen yelling at my coworker that it's been 15 minutes, what's the holdup, and she explains to her that it's filled but the pharmacist just needs to verify it, but he went on lunch and will be back in 20 minutes and that she's super sorry. This causes a rampage where she can't believe that he would leave without verifying everything before he clocks out, obviously doesn't know how a pharmacy works, and how can we only have one pharmacist? That's when I step in and explain to her that we are only open 10 to 6 today, so we only get one since it's one shift and we're a fairly small store. She starts yelling that this APHARMACY, pointing out our sign, and that we aren't doing our jobs, so she wants to go to a 24-hour pharmacy 10 minutes away because they always have a pharmacist on duty. I explained to her that they are a super busy store and their wait time is at least an hour and she's better off just waiting here rather than doing all that. She yells profanities and calls us idiots and leaves. Okay, so I leave it at that, and to make her day a little bit faster I transfer it over to them. An hour and a half passes and she calls us saying that she's at the other store and it's still not ready, and why didn't I tell them to have it ready? Neutral face. First of all, I told you so, and second of all, she never asked me to transfer it, but I went out of my way to do so out of the kindness of my own heart. I didn't feel like arguing or explaining anything to her again, so I said, "I'm so sorry ma'am, but I can't control how fast another store works." But by the way, the pharmacist had came back 10 minutes after she left. Woman shrugging. At my last job, and now in my current job, I would have these mandatory performance reviews that include my performance goals for the upcoming year. When I sign up for these, it's with the express purpose of preparing for a merit increase at the end of the period. This never happened in my last job because they were always making bad decisions that left them scrambling to make ends meet, much less try to give people pay raises. In my new job, of course, there's been an impact from COVID, so I was told there would be no merit increases this year because there's no money available. Okay, I get it, and it's fine because I wasn't eligible this time around anyway, but for next year, they're already saying no raises at the end of this year, but they still want us to do the performance reviews and goal setting. Of course you want your workforce to continue to improve and to meet the demands of the job, but I'm doing that. I just get a kind of minor issue with putting in the effort to do the performance review, but with no payoff from me in it. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who feels this way. In my last job, it was completely pointless because no one even cared, not the employees, the bosses, or the managers. It was just a box you had to check, but here, it's like you're supposed to be all chipper about it like it's going to mean something. I am 14. I am a certified referee in my state. I know the rules as I've played by them my whole life along with taking the officiating classes. At our park district, no headers for ages below 11. But in U12, it is up to the referee's discretion. So if it's a small tap it's okay. That is exactly what happens. So the coach behind me screams at the top of his lungs there are no headers in U12 5 to 16 times. I ignore him. Though I could eject him. It was last game of the season and I didn't care. After a bit of yelling, he says fine, go duck yourself then, which I turn and tell at him for saying in front of U11 kids. I wish I sent him away or ended the match. Sadly I didn't do much and my partner is a longtime referee, officiated my matches as I grew up, and he is deaf. So he has no idea what happened. The person who runs Park District in my area has been informed and is taking action. Tifu by sitting a kid with poor eyesight in the back of the class for a month. First of all, I am a third-grade classroom teacher in a Japanese private elementary school with an English immersion program. We've been fully back at school since halfway through June, look how well our numbers are doing. /s. This kid, with the bad eyesight. He's so well behaved and studious, and 3/4 of my class is special needs and has behavioral issues so they are more towards the front. There's only 5 to 6 rows of chairs, so it's not like I can't keep an eye on the kids in the back, but another kid with eyesight issues told us she couldn't see from her seat. So we moved her to the front. This kid never said a word. He said nothing to anyone, not even his parents, cause they would have been on us in moments if he had. He always does his work perfectly, he makes no waves. The other day, I took them all to their eye check, and he was suddenly wearing glasses I've never seen before. The eye test in Japan is mostly circles of decreasing size with a small gap in the top, bottom, left or right, and you say which direction the gap is facing in the circle that is pointed at. I watched as this kid pointed the wrong way for every circle the nurse pointed to. I told my co-teacher, who was just as astonished as I was. Somehow, his work hasn't seemed to suffer as a result of this. Hopefully his parents will take him back to the optician, because those glasses are doing nothing. But we'll definitely be sticking him much closer to the front from now on. DL, drive, my student has terrible vision and never told us, and we stuck him in the back of the class because he is well behaved. Found out during school eye test, wondering now how much info he has missed. This is a very famous case so I think it is unnecessary to write it. I just post a link. A weird case in many eyes. But, could it be very simple but creepy? Some members of that party killed him directly, purposely, aka murder, or indirectly, by accident, and all of them simply lied? 1. Kurt did go to that party, but not long after that he died. Maybe someone murdered him, maybe he simply died by accident. 2. The members of party were all involved and feared punishment, so they lied together to mess everything. Mind you, not all liars must be the member of party, they could be intimidated, you must lie for us or we will kick your ass, etc. So the classmate B could also be a liar. 3. They placed body at that ravine. Before this he may be placed in icebox or any other low temperature place to disrupt death time. Additionally, because of the technology at that time, experience of coroner, etc. the time when he died may be mistaken eventually. He may die 1 or 2 days just after the party. About that shoe, it may touch something which can't be washed away but can become decisive evidence, so they remove it. 4. If death of Eugene Kvat had something to do with Kurt Sova, it may be used to mislead cops, making them think it was done by serial, random killers or whatever. But if it is true, the KS death may be a murder. Of course he may also die because of some ridiculous reasons, imitation, for example. 5. That strange man who sent cards may have nothing to do with this case. But if he was, he may also be used to mislead cops, disrupting timeline and so on. Tifu by trying to convince my friends that they were mispronouncing a word even though I was. I grew up with my mom telling me that the sweetener aspartame is pronounced aspartame instead of the correct pronunciation of aspartame. I was driving around with a group of friends during high school graduation day when I said something about aspartame. The driver's mom was a dietitian/nutritionist, so he asked, "Do you mean aspartame?" I said, "No, I mean aspartame." Now's a good time to mention that I'm pretty proud of my ability to pronounce words correctly. I was hooked on phonics as a child, and I've always enjoyed reading. I don't mispronounce things often, and when I do, it feels wrong to me. So, I did the only logical thing I could think of, and I doubled down to educate my friends that aspartame is pronounced aspartame. They were graduating high school, they should enter the real world knowing how to pronounce this uncommon word. Unfolds this argument between me and everyone else in the car. I say aspartame, they say aspartame. It's 3-to-1 odds against me, but I'm a fighter and an educator, and they will learn the truth no matter how hard it is to hear. After minutes of this argument going nowhere, I start laughing because of how ridiculous the situation is, and one of my friends starts smiling. "You're messing with us, aren't you?" He thinks this is an elaborate game to mess with them. I see a way out and realize that maybe I am in the wrong here, so I take it. "Yeah, I got you good, didn't I? Ha." I go home, look up aspartame to realize how wrong I was and have an eye-opening conversation with my mom. She was just as surprised as I was, but she laughed at me because I got to suffer for the both of us. I've never come clean to my friends. To them, I'm a pretty good jokester willing to commit to a bit. I'll take their respect and the correct pronunciation of a word with a little personal humiliation any day. TL, Dr. I incorrectly thought aspartame was pronounced aspartame and spent several minutes trying to convince my friends of this. Ended up playing it off like a joke, and nobody's the wiser. Edit, changed incredulous to ridiculous based on feedback from you/Muffinerd.